There's something about the chainsaw. Since its invention in 1927, it's been the standard for lumber production all across the world. Entire empires have been built on the back of this little guy. It's a powerhouse, a workhorse, and a symbol of an honest, earned living. But it's also a fucking murder machine. Since horror's golden age, the chainsaw has lost all semblance of credibility as a serious tool and is instead viewed as a meat grinder. Its speed, power, and pure intimidating attitude has caused it to be a symbol of rage. And with early FPS's connection to this era of horror, action hero cinema, and well, violence, it's only natural that the chainsaw would make the jump to the virtual world. But it's different than miniguns, shotguns, and other mainstays of the FPS genre. It's not like a weapon. I mean, sure, it'd be pretty rough to be on the wrong side of one of these bad boys, but given the option, they're not what I would go for. So why are they so huge in video games? Well, it all started with a little game called Doom. Okay, I guess technically the first game to feature a chainsaw was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre game on the Atari, but it was so controversial it barely got put on shelves, and it looks like this. So I'm not saying that it's irrelevant or anything, but it kind of is. Doom changed a lot for video games, and anything I could say about it would probably be a repeat of someone who's been playing and modding it since before I was born. But nonetheless, Doom was and is kind of a huge deal. About every Doom featured the chainsaw in some way, shape, or form, some of which we'll talk about later on, but the original is just so special. In a game full of laser guns, demons, and chain guns, Doom encourages players for the first time to get up close and personal with the beast from hell. It does two things. It makes the fight feel a little improvised, like you're not as prepared as you should be, and you're getting demon guts in your crankshaft, which isn't covered in your Craftsman lifetime warranty. It also makes things feel impersonal. You're not cutting up like human people that matter. You're cutting through hordes of terrifying, Lovecraftian beasts from the pits of hell, and you shouldn't think of them as anything more than a piece of wood that needs cutting. Doom's chainsaw is modeled after Tom Hall's girlfriend's Macaulay Eager Beaver, a late 80s 2.0 cubic inch chainsaw that I spent way too much time reading about on arboristsite.com, a forum for diehard tree cutters and collectors. In-game and online, it is a chainsaw in the absolute purest sense. And while there's no physical damage to whatever enemy you choose to saw, it does pull you closer to give you the illusion of being, stuck into them. It's like I always say, that's one eager beaver. I don't know, if I had a choice between punching one of these eyeball monsters versus sticking my chainsaw through them, I'd pick the chainsaw every day. And Doom Guy has some pretty solid chainsaw etiquette. 2 hands firmly planted. Just because you're a space marine doesn't mean you don't need all your fingies, which is the rating I've decided to give Doom's chainsaw, 10 unsevered digits out of 10. And because it's like, I guess the most influential and most important game of all time, people have naturally tried to borrow some aspects from what Doom did. Serious Sam is like 50% id Shooter and 50% Duke Nukem clone, developed in a country that gave us Dalmatians, Nikolai Tesla, and the second oldest piece of man-made fortification after the Great Wall of China. Croatia. And the second encounter, the second game in the series, not to be confused with Serious Sam 2, the third game in the series, finally gave us a chainsaw.
Look, Ma, I'm a lumberjack.
And it's alright. It's another case of just holding it out in front of you and hoping for the best, which I mean is the safe choice. But did I really get sent back in time to kill an ancient alien and his horde of scorpion women in order to save humanity from extinction just to play it safe? You're the last hope. Have a little fun, man. I get that it's like the definition of boilerplate FPS, especially by today's standards, and by the standards of when it came out. Like shit, it looks good and can handle like a lot of stuff on screen, but this game came out after Half-Life, and that's kind of unbelievable. So don't hold it against me when I give this chainsaw a pretty solid 4 unsevered digits out of 10, even though it does basically the same thing Doom does 9 years later. If these action gunrunner FPSs should learn anything, it's that timeliness counts. That being said though, I like the second encounter's chainsaw way more than the actual Serious Sam 2's buzzsaw thing. That thing is ugly and gets 2 leftover digits out of 10. There's not even a chain. Gross. And while Doom Guy and Serious Sam I Am like to play it a little safe, Lo Wang from Shadow Warrior 2 is on another level. There's a nice standard chainsaw that's heavy and that uses animations instead of just something that pokes up against enemies, but there's also a chainsaw katana, a weapon that splits the difference between the speed and grace of a katana and, all the good shit that comes with the chainsaw. It is not a safe device by any stretch of the phrase, and it kind of defeats the purpose of using a piece of hardware in a combat situation, but it looks cool. And using a chainsaw is like 50% looking cool, alright?
Does that look cool?
Make a cooler face.
People don't become lumberjacks because they like chopping wood. They become lumberjacks to look like cool New York City hipsters who are really into Tame Impala and like kombucha or whatever. We're incredibly off topic, but I'd say Lo Wang will lose 3 fingers using his chainsaw katana, so he gets a whopping 7 out of 10. That's pretty good. A lot of older third-person shooters like Vice City and Saints Row use the chainsaw as an homage to that one scene that I haven't seen in Scarface. According to the Wikipedia article Chainsaws in Popular Culture, there's one that's in that 50 Cent Bulletproof game on the PS2, but I'm saving up all my 50 Cent talk for my 50 Cent Retrospective episode, and I can't find a picture of it anyways. On a scale of 1 to 10 unsevered fingers, that's probably a 2 or so, for not making it iconic, but an extra 6 points for putting it in a game about my favorite rapper. Honestly, beyond homage to like old gangster films, I don't really know how I feel about the utilization of these in like these crime-inspired Grand Theft Auto style games. They're forced to exist in like a more realistic environment, and so they end up feeling clumsy and awkward when they should really just be a bit of a power trip. And obviously we had to talk about Lollipop Chainsaw, a game that I definitely bought as a 23-year-old person and only got judged by the cashier a little bit.
Don't think that me letting you in here is an invitation for any funny stuff. I mean, not that I have a problem with funny stuff.
Let's just stick to the chainsaw on this one. According to this Yahoo Answers page, Juliet is about 5 foot 4 inches, or 64 inches total. And in this image, she's about 6 inches tall. And her chainsaw is 2.5 inches long. That would make it a, alright, let's see here. Yeah, and multiply by that, and right, just as I expected. A 25-inch steel MS-362 chainsaw with a custom foam grip. That's a reliable chainsaw. I mean, Kevin1212 called it, quote, awesome. And user Owibo described it as, quote, tough as nails. And he's a volunteer sawyer in Roanoke County that had a really bad wind and ice storm last November that toppled almost 600 trees in Blue Ridge Parkway. If it's good enough for him, then it's good enough for a 110-pound underage cheerleader who has a serious zombie problem in her high school. Juliet may be a responsible consumer, but she's not a responsible sawyer. No boots, no headgear, and eating candy while sawing isn't very safe. But she does keep both hands firmly planted. In-game, it acts a little bit more like a katana than a chainsaw, but it does have a humming feeling that makes it feel more powerful than, say, the beam katana in No More Heroes or something. I don't know. I'm gonna go straight down the middle on this one. 5 fingers, but probably not on the same hand. Mad World is one of my favorite games on the Wii, and I absolutely adore the way its chainsaw feels. I mean, you can punch away at dudes all day and be creative as possible, but when you just absolutely have to kill a group of goons dead as quickly as possible, the chainsaw comes in handy. It's fast, but it's not Lollipop Chainsaw fast, and it's heavy, but not Vice City heavy. And it uses the little speaker on the Wii remote to make it sound like you really truly have a chainsaw for a hand. It uses it as a limited resource, so it's, you know, not like the dominant strategy or anything, but you have enough gas that it's not something you have to use sparingly. I don't know, Jack holds this guy at a safe distance from his body, and he's wearing protective goggles. This one loses 1 for not having full color safety labels, which I'm pretty sure is a thing, so it gets a whopping 9 out of 10. I fucking love Mad World, dude. This old Flash game called Skull Kid features a relatively slow-paced but very graphic chainsaw sequence that exists in my memory next to all of the lyrics in Into Club and How to Cheat at Spank the Monkey. But it really isn't challenging or dynamic. 4 fingers out of 10. Dead Rising 2 basically duct tapes its chainsaws to one of those foam whacking sticks so that it can be swung around in the widest arc. It seems both dangerous and fucking badass. And then there's the chainsaw motorcycle, which is even more insane, and oh my god, you should be wearing a helmet. Being a zombie game and one designed around killing as many as possible as efficiently as possible, I would expect nothing less than a Mythbusters-style weapon of mass concussion that is a motorcycle with 2 chainsaws coming out of the side. I don't know what score to give it though. I mean, it's unsafe as hell, and every time you get on one, an OSHA guy like faints, but nonetheless, it's pretty darn cool. Wolfenstein: The New Order not only has you interrogate a Nazi general with one, which is like the best use of a chainsaw since sliced bread, but also you wear an apron and goggles for splatter protection. It may not be implemented in like the main gameplay loop, and it probably isn't an homage to any film or movie that I can think of, but it does feel really improvised in a way that shows how much the world has changed. Fighting the Nazis is no longer storming beaches and breaking into castles. It's stealthy guerrilla tactics in city streets and suburban homes. Maybe that's a stretch, but this scene is just -1 point because BJ doesn't properly choke his chainsaw, which is why it doesn't start on one pole. 9 out of 10. It's one of the best, but there's one that is absolutely incredible, perfect, and dare I say it, glorious. I know it's kind of a cop-out, as I've already talked about the franchise, but Doom 2016 is the definition of just good all-around gunplay and melee combat. It's probably the best pure first-person shooter of the decade. I know that's not a hot take, but still, it's one that we really need to discuss more often. Doom 2016 is the sound of blood pumping in your ears. It's fast, it's hectic, and it is oh so bloody, and it uses its chainsaw in the best possible way. Its primary gameplay loop is based around being as bold as possible, running into combat, punching, shooting, and neck-snapping your way through everything ever. Do a melee kill at a specific moment? Here, be showered in health. But if you're low on ammo, old Doomslayer whips out this bad boy, the Beaver Tooth Painsaw. That's one eager beaver. It's a 3-hit weapon. Doomslayer hits a demon with it, 2 halves of that demon hit the floor. It showers you in ammo, and it's basically an insta-kill button, but by making the fuel for it so rare and breaking up how much fuel it takes to kill certain demons into levels, it not only makes it your absolute last resort, it also makes it be more realistic. Alright, woodcutting time. We're gonna talk about real-world woodcutting. If I'm gonna cut through a Chinese elm, it's gonna take like a cup of gas to get the job done. But if I'm gonna cut down a 250-year-old oak tree that's seen the founding of our great nation, the assassination of 3 presidents, and the entire career of William H. Macy, I'm gonna need a little extra gas. And if I'm gonna cut through one of those eyeball guys, I'm gonna have to put my back into it. It's a great system, one that balances the improvised nature of a chainsaw with the raw power that comes with it. That coupled with the perfect OSHA-approved piece of safety equipment that is the Praetor suit and an incredible score by one of the best composers in any medium ever, I think Doomslayer is gonna keep all of his fingers, so this one gets a whopping 10 digits out of 10. In case you haven't noticed, I don't have some dramatic point to make about why the chainsaw works in video games. They don't really change the medium in any way, but since they're so common in action and horror cinema, and a lot of these games are attempting to emulate like that feeling, they naturally have to show up. The chainsaw is grounded in reality but shrouded in fantasy, like the cult Peacemaker or the Slap Chop, and it takes normal, everyday, working-class space marines, Nazi killers, motocross champions, and cheerleaders and turns them into someone who can stand firm against the gates of hell, or an alien invasion, or the Nazi war machine and say, "Please go away. I don't want to cut you. You'd get blood on me and that would be gross." So keep an eye out for any chainsaws you see in games, and drop me a line if you see a cool one because they instantly elevate the action to that rated M territory that makes brutal, gory games so much fun. Thanks for watching. Sorry about the blood everywhere. We should really get somebody to come in and clean that up. But if you liked this episode about something niche in a video game, then you should check out this video about gambling mechanics in video games.